that this arrangement is appropriate between McKinsey, Fortress Energy, and SoftBank?
I cannot judge something I haven't seen, really. You know, we have to check that very closely, knowing that we have been.
I ask you, sir, if you think that this arrangement is appropriate.
Transparency and all that.
Mr. Ortiz, would you please answer my question? Do you think this arrangement is appropriate?
Mute. Mr. Ortiz, you may be muted. Can you unmute, please, and answer the question?
No,
Mr. Ortiz?
No, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did.
So my question is, do you think that arrangement is appropriate?
My answer again, responsibly, is I don't know what arrangement you're talking about. I haven't seen that before. I cannot.
So you haven't seen the documents that were filed in court?
I cannot give you an opinion on something I haven't seen. I'll be responsible.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will ask that the documents were sent to Mr. Ortiz, and Mr. Ortiz answer the question in writing to the committee.
Perfect.
Okay. So the gentleman will provide an answer in writing. So granted.
Mr. Ortiz, did PREPA do any due diligence to ensure that consultants with access to the procurement documents did not have conflict of interest?
Yes, that's a normal procedure.
How could you? However, we have a relationship between McKinsey, Fortress, and SoftBank, and you're telling me that that doesn't impact the procurement process. I can tell you that I've been fighting to get my legislation passed, which passed the House. We're waiting for the Senate, that passed the committee. Because the people of Puerto Rico are cynical, they are tired of the lack of transparency when it comes to issues that are important, that are going to impact their lives. So we have to make sure that the public trusts the new Fortress Energy contract is beneficial for the people of Puerto Rico when there is a lack of transparency and a clear conflict of interest during the procurement process. Mr. Avilés, can you explain why the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau failed to submit the new Fortress Energy contract for review by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission?
We, the Energy Bureau, is the local regulator, and we don't have to submit to the FERC the contract.
So the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission didn't send a show cause document asking New Fortress why did the contract was not submitted for FERC approval. You are not aware of that?
Yes, we are aware that the FERC is right now evaluating why New Fortress didn't submit to them some document for their permitting. But PREP is a local regulator, and all we did was to comply with the applicable local law and regulation in the evaluation of the documents submitted by PREPA when they submit the contract.
Mr. Fontanes, will Luma Energy, oh, my time is up.
Yeah.
Well, there were some technology issues, and so some time was,
Okay, ask your final question, Representative.
yes. Mr. Fontanes, will Luma Energy will be required to assume the pension payments, cover pre-existing health conditions, and any other benefits that those PREPA employees it hires had?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. Luma Energy is coming as an operator of the system. So they will assume the obligations that PREPA has as an operator of the system.
And what will happen? Yes,
Go ahead.
continue, please.
Well, under Act 120, all acquired rights that the employees have under PREPA are transferred to Luma once they move to Luma. So any acquired rights that they have under the law, under regulation, or under the collective bargaining agreement moves with them to Luma. If they choose to stay with the PREPA pension plan, then Luma has an obligation to fund the PREPA pension plan. If they choose to join the Luma pension plan, then they will be offered what the Luma pension plan offers to them once they join.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
Okay,
yield back.
the gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Representative Gosar for 5 minutes, please.
I thank the chairman. I yield my time to Ms. Cologne.
Okay. The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Gosar, for yielding. One of the questions is going to be now to Mr. Jose Ortiz again, and is regarding the process for contract and RFP on PREPA. In terms of the contracts that are being discussed here today, did the Financial Oversight Board Management and the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau review the RFP process?
Yes, Congresswoman, not only the PREP and the Fiscal Oversight Board, but also in many cases the Title III for the Ecoelectrica contract, and also court, the Court of Appeals, and the administrative judge as well. So it has been reviewed for all possible entities or bodies to rule over them.
So the contract that we're talking about was challenged in the courts. It was challenged by who?
It was challenged by Puma, which was the second bidder. It went to the administrative judge. It didn't proceed. They went then to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals granted to PREPA again their position. So it was done in a proper way. So this has been reviewed not only there, but also publicly, you know. And actually, at the end of the day, Puma came to our offices to say, you know, we tried to do the best, but anyway, we failed this one. Will be next time. But to be honest, at the end of the day, we had the best of both worlds in that facility. Right now, you are able to burn natural gas, which is a lot cleaner. You make it comply with the EPA standards right now. And also, you have Puma as a supplier for diesel if needed. So you have the best of both worlds in terms of reliability and resiliency, in terms of a shortage of any of those fuels.
Question will be now in terms of the FERC. There's many talks and letters from members of this committee regarding FERC and a requirement to show costs of why it was not approved or requested that approval. What is the due diligence for PREPA of making the new contract? You need to have a FERC authorization, and in that sense, what were the processes you made with FERC regarding the new contract?
Yes, well, in 2018 and in 2019, we met with the FERC officials, and basically they made a representation to us to PREPA, to our board members as well, which visited the FERC officials, that this is a small project that will not basically be under jurisdiction of FERC. The same representation was made to New Fortress Energy, and the same representation was made to the Coast Guard as well. So all those meetings were very consistent in that no jurisdiction was needed here. Let me tell you, and these discussions have been back to 2012 when I was the chairman of the board. At that time, I met with John Wellinghoff, the FERC executive director at that time in 2012. And he came to Puerto Rico and we met and we talked about the project. I was not at any point discuss anything about jurisdiction. He just said, I remember at that time, he said, you just have to check the buffer zone, to preserve, for any potential problem or whatever. But that's it. That's all you have to take care of. So this is a project that has been discussed around for more than 8 years with different administrations in FERC. And up to this point, it was good. The representation that no FERC permit was needed, as it was presented to me and to my board. And it is good today as well. If you foresee all the different awards that FERC has been granted without any jurisdiction, basically. One example from the island, I can tell you, is Costa Sur. In Costa Sur, we have over a mile pipeline connected to Ecoelectrica. FERC didn't require any, taking any jurisdiction there. We're talking a mile pipeline. Here, we're talking about 75-foot pipeline, very close to the dock. So it doesn't make sense. If one was not needed, the other even less. So it makes a perfect sense, the representation from FERC officials at that time with what's being discussed today.
Thank you. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Representative Saban for 5 minutes, please, of questioning.
Mr. Chairman, did you just call me out?
Yes, I did, sir, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Okay. Does anyone need time? I really have no question.
We have Mr. Soto here who might take 5 minutes for questioning. Do you prefer?
Sure. Thank you. I thank
Okay, the chair recognizes the gentleman for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from the Northern Mariana Islands for that courtesy. Even during these difficult times, we have a tremendous opportunity to bring Puerto Rico's energy industry into the 21st century. And I want to reiterate some guiding principles that are important for the committee. One, we need power to be resilient and reliable. Two, we need it to be affordable. And three, we need to make every effort to boost renewable energy where feasible. I first want to talk a little bit about resiliency and reliability. Hurricane Maria exposed the vulnerable state of Puerto Rico's energy system. We took the rare step of amending the Stafford Act for Puerto Rico to be able to rebuild the grid better. Hurricane Dorian reminded us how precarious a position Puerto Rico still is in. It's not a question of if another hurricane will hit, but when. That's why it's critical that we use federal disaster relief funds to focus in part on rebuilding a more resilient and reliable system that can withstand another Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane. We also need it to be affordable. Puerto Rico is in an over decade-long recession, was hit by Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma, is facing terrible budget cuts by a Promesa fiscal board, endured a wave of earthquakes, and now faces a coronavirus pandemic. The people of Puerto Rico must have affordable energy in order to survive, to thrive, and to bring the island back to prosperity. And finally, we need to adopt more renewable and cleaner fuels. Right now, we see 40% petroleum, 39% natural gas, 18% coal, and 2.3% renewables. First and foremost, it's clear that petroleum and coal are dirty and expensive and have to go as soon as possible. Puerto Rico law now requires the visionary standard of 100% renewable energy by 2050. These federal funds can also and should also be used to meet this renewable goal. We must start by boosting individual rooftop solar and battery systems, particularly in La Cordillera Central, like what the committee saw in Toro Negro during our trip, as well as other rural and low population areas. We also must convert other power generation to a combination of both renewable and natural gas. My question to several of you, and I'll call on you individually, is can Puerto Rico get rid of oil and coal by 2030? And if so, what is an achievable mix of renewables and natural gas that we could achieve by 2030 and why? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ortiz.
Yes, well, the renewable technology is getting better and better by year by year. I doubt we can go, for example, 100% renewable by 2030.
But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if we could get rid of oil and coal and convert to both renewables and natural gas by 2030.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Okay.
That's an absolute yes. We're moving to natural gas to replace all the liquid oils. Absolutely.
And Ms. Santiago, do you think we could get rid of oil and coal by 2030? And if so, what achievable mix can we get between renewables and natural gas by 2030? You're on mute.
Oops, okay. Yeah, so I think that we heard expert after expert at the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau hearings in this past February, talking about the steps that we need to really transform the Puerto Rico electric grid. Those steps start with energy efficiency programs, energy demand response programs, and certainly, yes, rooftop solar, renewables, coupled with battery energy storage systems, and other alternatives to centralized stations with fossil fuels.
My time's expired.
We can absolutely.
The gentleman has 30 seconds more because of
please continue.
The delay in the clock.
Right. Okay, so we can absolutely make huge gains starting with those programs. And I expect that we can eliminate the burning of fossil fuels very rapidly. I would not say definitely in 2030, but certainly what we saw, what the experts said, everyone, and even the Siemens industry, which is the PREPA contractor, agreed that renewables with the complementary battery energy storage systems and other programs that I mentioned can do the job even as to the critical facilities like hospitals.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Representative Graves for 5 minutes, please, for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question for Mr. Ortiz. First of all, I do want to follow up the questions that the gentlewoman from Puerto Rico brought up about the extraordinary investment. I too am interested in learning more about the billions of dollars that have been invested and have been borrowed by PREPA for investment into the energy system there. Yet the system still lacks performance. But I had another question. I know that a number of utilities went to Puerto Rico to provide assistance in restoring the system. And I know that a number of those utilities have provided invoices or billing to PREPA. And I know that FEMA has actually provided the reimbursement to PREPA for that work that was done by the utilities. However, the utilities in many cases have not been reimbursed or only been reimbursed a fraction of what was owed to them. Mr. Ortiz, could you explain sort of the disposition of those reimbursements and when PREPA plans on fulfilling their financial commitments that FEMA has already provided to them?
Actually, yes, you're absolutely right. We had some struggles at the beginning paying those companies. It was resolved already, finally. PREPA took like a year and a half in designing cost codes to be able to pay them, to reimburse them. That was resolved already. I hope in the next couple of months everybody will be paid. So
your estimate, I just want to make sure I heard you. Your estimate is in the next couple of months, you think that everyone should be paid?
Everything should be solved, yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, I yield my remaining time to Ms. Gonzalez.
The remaining time is
Thank you.
spent to the gentlelady from Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Graves, for yielding and actually for visiting the island after Hurricane Maria and Irma, and helping us out. My question will be in the same. Before the time expired, I was asking Mr. Ortiz about the FERC diligence prior selecting the contract, and after your answer, my next question should be, if you have moved forward with the connection of the new company, if FERC tell you at that time that you needed any other provision or submit an application or have an authorization, you have been moving forward even having that, or you will stop that kind of a contract?
Well, certainly if the contract, the permitting belongs to the contractor. So that's their responsibility. I'll have to keep burning diesel, which is much more expensive. It's much more damage to the environment until they get the permit. So we're not going to be penalized. The people of Puerto Rico will be penalized, basically. But that's what's going to happen. It's their responsibility to get the contract. To get the permit.
A question. If there was any other federal regulator that were concerned or express any reservation about that San Juan Harbor project before or during the process it was developed or built at that time?
No. The answer is no. The other one that is basically in a co-responsibility there is the Coast Guard. And they met with FERC and they argued that they were represented that no FERC jurisdictional permit is necessary. So that's why I don't understand their last moment requests.
Question: do that new contract include provision for use or play provisions that you must use in PREPA?
No, we don't have any take or pay clause. We will be paying for whatever we use. If at some point diesel becomes cheaper, we can turn to diesel. But at the end of the day, we need to comply with EPA emissions. So it's very important, not only for the price purposes, but to comply with the non-attainment zone in EPA for many years in the area of San Juan to get natural gas there.
Question: what will be the net saving for the government and for the people of Puerto Rico just for giving this kind of transition or conversion?
Well, we can talk about 1 cent per kilowatt hour, but that translates basically in a family that consumes $150 a month, they'll be paying like $12 less. About that. Well, that's for the common people.
Okay, can you repeat the number again?
If a family consumes $150, I'm talking about dollars now, that family will be paying $138 rather than $150 using the natural gas.
Thank you. My time expires, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Lowenthal for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And first I want to apologize for running back and forth. I know other members have done this also, running back and forth and voting, and especially one who is voting remotely. It's getting to be quite a little trying to stay on top of both the hearing and what's going on the floor. And my question then may have been already asked to some extent, but I'm going to go back and, if it's worth saying it once, it's worth saying it more than once. And this is for Mr. Ortiz. at the Electric Power Authority. You know, the workers are really critical to the utilities success. But, you know, their ability to excel has been limited somewhat by these outdated procedures that are not really consistent with industry best practices at this moment. So the question that I have is a few of them. How will LUMA actually improve working conditions? Have they had experience working with unions in some of the, you know, their consortium and some of their other operations? And how will that LUMA contract have on the union, and will the existing union, the electrical industry and irrigation workers union, and does LUMA support unionization? Do they allow for unionization?
Yes, part of LUMA is Quanta. Quanta is the biggest, basically, utility company with the biggest number of unionized workers. So they know how to work with unions. And the benefit, I'll say, and this is what I've noticed so far, is that they devote a lot of time on training of the people, mostly on the safety issues. And secondary, since they have workers worldwide, basically, they can provide a lot of best practices, not only from the mainland, but also from the world, to our employees. PREPA is a very difficult terrain. It's a tropical environment as well. So it has all the challenges. But let me tell you, the people of Puerto Rico is excellent. I think some additional training with all these new potential ways of seeing the things that are happening somewhere else, good practices, will be a plus for all these employees.
I have another question now, and thank you for that, about the pension system. My understanding is it's woefully underfunded, and I'd like to know just how underfunded is it, and what are you going to do to ensure pensions? Will now PREPA make or LUMA make greater contributions? Will that add to the cost of electricity? How do you propose dealing with this shortfall in the pension system?
Yes, good question. The shortfall, let me tell you, the fund needs $5.5 billion. They have assets for $1.2 billion. So they are in the hole $4.3 billion. Bringing LUMA will stop the bleeding, basically. And we can cut from there, and the LUMA worker can decide to keep putting putting their monies in the pension plan. So we're trying to stop the bleeding here. Now, PREPA has to deal with the $4.3 billion, and certainly it will have to be a PREPA's responsibility to find that money. Obviously, the retirees cannot have the way to do it. We're looking for ways to reduce the tariff so that we can plug in some money to support the pension fund. There's no other way unless there is a tax, something in the tax system of Puerto Rico to provide money to that pension fund. But certainly, the pension fund is in a very difficult situation. LUMA, basically what they make is not fixing it. They're just stopping the bleeding so that we can deal with what is in arrears, the $4.3 billion. So that's the way I foresee this.
I have just a little bit of time left, and I chair the subcommittee on natural resource on energy and mineral resources, and we've held a number of hearings in the North Atlantic on offshore wind. Has there been any attempts to begin to deal with offshore wind as an alternative for renewable energy?
No, it hasn't. But certainly, I visited the wind farm close to it's at the north of Montauk. You have a very nice wind farm there, and I know New York is trying to do something bigger offshore.
And Massachusetts? Massachusetts is doing it?
And they're talking about around 9 cents per kilowatt hour, which is very competitive for Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico in the south is very shallow and it's very windy. So I foresee something being explored in the near future. But those are the conditions I discussed already with with the New York Power Authority and with the Long Island Power Authority.
Well, thank you for that, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lowenthal. The chair recognizes Mrs. Radewagen for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for holding this hearing. I welcome the panel. At this time, I yield all of my time to Congresswoman Gonzalez Colon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, my friend Amada Radewagen. I know you are in American Samoa this time, so thank you for yielding. And I will just take my turn this time to enforce what Representative Lowenthal just mentioned about the opportunities in offshore energy. And in that sense, I just want to highlight bipartisan legislation I introduced that could help Puerto Rico's energy transformation. And in that sense, it was passed during the last Congress. Again, it was recommended by this committee unanimously. All territories are original co-sponsors of this bill, again, in a bipartisan way. And I'm referring to H.R. 1014, the Offshore Wind for Territories Act. The bill will amend federal law to study the potential for an authorized offshore wind energy development in the exclusive economic zone adjacent to the 5 U.S. territories. I mean, you may have that in the eastern part of the United States, but territories are not authorized by Congress. So in that sense, it could establish a dedicated fund for coral reef conservation and a direct portion of this of the offshore wind revenues back into the local communities. Again, this committee reported this unanimously last year. And an identical bill was passed under suspension. So we are, if enacted, this bill will create not just jobs, address energy needs and the prices in the territories, and for me, very important, and our reliance on imported foreign petroleum products, while boosting revenue sources and helping protect our coral reef. So in that sense, that's something that will promote the study of it. It's not that we're going to be doing it, although we visited the windmills in the south part of the island recently with the delegation of the Department of Energy. Now I'm going back to Mr. Ortiz. There are several issues that are being part of the questionings today regarding not just the private contracts, but whether the PREPA is in a good position to face new developments in the south, like the earthquakes or the hurricanes. And in that sense, I was asking prior to this turn, the situation with the FERC. My question will be, let's assume, and this is a bad omen, but anyway, what should be the impact for PREPA and for the people of Puerto Rico if FERC order this facility to shut down? What's going to be the immediate impact for PREPA?
Well, immediately, Congresswoman, we will have to rely more on the South generation. The same area that is being shaking for the past 6 months, we will be passing all the responsibility to provide energy to the 70% of the Puerto Ricans from the South, basically, because there's, the main plan is San Juan, and we are not allowed to use this 100% because that provides limitations from the EPA due to the emissions with diesel. So we will have to go back to provide energy to the north, from the south, and that was the biggest problem of Maria. When we lost the transmission from the south to north, we lost basically power for, like 70% of the population for close to 5 months until we restore basically the central area of the island. So we will be in a weaker position. We will be using in a limited way San Juan 5 and 6. And we will be limiting the reliability of the system very seriously.
And that means that if we need to go back to Costa Sur in the south part of the island, that we will not have neither 500 or 800 megawatts that are needed in reserve to manage the capacity of the demand of electricity on the island. Am I right?
You're correct.
And at this time, how much megawatts we still have in reserve to meet the demands of the energy on the island?
Right now, we are in 3,200 megawatts. The demand is close to 2,800. Basically, in average, we're around those numbers.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez-Colon. The chair recognizes Mr. Cox for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you for our witnesses for being here today. My question has more to do with kind of some of the previous disasters that have unfortunately befallen Puerto Rico. And as Ms. Gonzalez-Colon noted earlier, and Mr. Tonko as well, we're right upon a new hurricane season. And there's certainly going to be future natural disasters. And my question really for Mr. Ortiz, if you'll indulge me, is that there's quite a bit of concern about the FEMA payments or no payments that have been made to contractors who stepped in during the aftermath of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And I'd really like to know is what has PREPA and the agency done with submitting and getting these contractors paid? And if they haven't, has FEMA shared with you any of the reasons that these contractors haven't been paid, why they're awaiting payments, and really what has PREPA done to submit and to advocate for these reimbursements?
Yes, most of the contractors that are still not paid or not fully paid are from the Edison Electrical Institute, the ones brought by that institution. That will be resolved in the next few days because what was missing was a cost code from FEMA in order to pay them. So it's something in their system that was resolved recently. We were basically fighting with that issue for a year and a half. That's resolved, and as I said to a previous congressman, it will be, I hope everybody will be paid in full within the next 2 months.
Oh, okay. Well, great. No, thank you so much. And if we could impress upon you about how necessary that is, and if need be, could you provide the committee with detailed information on these project worksheets so, in fact, that we could follow with FEMA if necessary?
Gladly.
Thank you so much. And certainly, the question to go out to both you, Mr. Ortiz and Mr. Rossi, is that have you seen or can you imagine any lack of willingness for other contractors to conduct emergency response work when future natural disasters impact the island because of the situation that we found ourselves in subsequent to Hurricanes Irma and Maria? If contractors aren't going to get paid, they're certainly going to be less likely to be able to step up when they're needed.
That's a very important point, and let me tell you, we get communication with them. They know what we are waiting for, and they know we have moved forward with their payments and all that. I foresee a good relationship with them, keeping the good bounds. And let me tell you, we actually participated in the mutual aid training for all facilities or all utilities back in October in New York, and our team was there with the other teams. So we keep a good communication, and I foresee all of them willing, to come and help Puerto Rico if needed, and the same way in the other direction.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Ortiz. And I don't know if Mr. Rossi would like to chime in as well.
I would think that PREPA would find a way to convince contractors to come in. I think the general problem we have is not just with contractors in emergency, it's in general just a lack of trust and confidence in PREPA's ability to execute makes everything more costly for PREPA and thus for consumers. I think that's what my statement had to do with. we need a world-class regulation along with world-class LUMA and world-class investment in renewable energy markets. That means something to homes and I think that's the biggest challenge we face. It's just the Puerto Rico risk, the PREPA risk would be very costly if we don't do something where congressional oversight, PREP, CDBRG come together to fix that Puerto Rico risk that won't be fixed for many years. And that's my greatest concern.
Great, thank you so much. And the committee certainly stands ready, willing, and able to help you in any way possible. And I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. And the chair will recognize, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. And I'll start with Mr. Ortiz and Mr. Aviles. Why is PREPA a binding public funds and long-term natural gas project, which is not a renewable energy source, when the integrated resource plan has not been approved by the Puerto Rico Energy Bureau, and Act 17/2019 requires the integration of 100% renewables by 2050?
If I may start, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Well, let me tell you, while we grow in the renewables, and we're growing very fast, really, nothing has been done in the past many years. And today we have 18,000 homeowners with detached solar, rooftop solar, good for 200 megawatts, so that you know. But the perfect partner in this dance of growing into renewables is a stable, cheap system with batteries. As I said before, we have 3 projects of batteries, battery farms in the east of Puerto Rico and 2 in the north, in the metropolitan area, good for 180 megawatts. But the thing here is that you cannot grow responsibly on renewables unless you have a very stable system that will catch up all the voids inherent to the renewable generation today. If you look at the graph of the consumption in Puerto Rico, it has peaks. And once you reach the 8:30, 9 p.m. every night, you have a big drop of renewables because you exhausted your batteries at that point. So you need something to catch up. And if you're talking about bringing industrials, manufacturing to the island, certainly you need a stabilization of the voltage. So the short-term projects we have with natural gas, but let me remind you that the natural gas, for example, in San Juan, is a 5-year project that you can extend in periods of 5 years, all depending on the need of injection of additional power due to the condition of the system. You know, all depends on how fast and how good the renewables behave. But certainly you need to fill the voids of the variability of the renewables in the system. And that's why the natural gas is so important.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let me ask Mr. Is Mr. Aviles still with us? Mr. Aviles, did you want to respond in some way?
Yes, I would like to add that in order to achieve the renewable goals established in Act 17, we need some kind of transition fuel. And I can say that gas at this moment is much better than the existing old and inefficiency petroleum gas. So that's why in some point we have to invest in gas in order to achieve the renewable goals clearly established in Act 17. That's the answer.
Thank you so much. I don't have a whole lot of time left, but let me go to, And both gentlemen, if you can answer jointly again, the federal coordinator for the reconstruction of Puerto Rico, Peter Brown, recently expressed that nuclear energy is an option to diversify Puerto Rico's energy sources. PREPA's integrated resources plan does not integrate nuclear energy as an option. Will PREPA maintain this position in compliance with Act 17-2019, which requires reaching a minimum of 40% renewable energy integration by 2025, 60% by 2040, and 100 by 2050?
But if I may, about the nuclear generation, it's not a technical problem. It's really a public policy problem. I don't foresee any community in the world saying that they are for the nuclear power. We could have the most advanced technology, very safe and all that. But with the myriad of events happening in the past 40 years in the world, I don't foresee that being pushed by any public official. You can certainly say that this is technically adequate, but it's very tough to sell to any community.
Thank you. Mr. Aviles, I'm over time now. Do you have anything to add just for a few seconds?
No, just like Mr. Ortiz already said, this is not a technical issue. This is a policy issue. So right now, Act 17 clearly states what the goals are, and nuclear energy is not there. But if our legislature decide otherwise, we have to follow. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your time. I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Under Committee Rule 3.0, members of the committee must submit witness questions within 3 business days following this hearing, and the hearing record will be open for 10 business days for these responses. If there is no further business.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to add something, Ms. Velasquez made a question to Mr. Ortiz referring to a document that was submitted for the record. I'm just asking the committee to submit that document to Mr. Ortiz as well as the ranking member so we can examine the documents because there were no direct reference of what they were.
Without objection. Without objection, so ordered. This committee stands adjourned.